Hello, everybody. It is a sunny day here in Berkeley, and I'm excited to show you about the Shortcuts app because it has been way too long since I walked people through the basics of how this thing works. So let's just go ahead and get started. So, for anybody who doesn't know, the Shortcuts app is available for iPhone and iPad, also called the iOS operating systems, and you are able to, getting through some stream basics, but basically you're able to create custom Siri shortcuts that work together in a row, and you can do things on your device, basically like Excel macros, where you've never been able to do this before with iPhones and iPads. And then you can also trigger these from the hi Giacomo in the stream. Also, everybody jump into the chat if you are watching, because I definitely appreciate comments if you have questions. But basically, the Shortcuts app can also, all of your shortcuts can be triggered from Apple Watch and HomePod and AirPods. So it's actually pretty cool because you can do a lot of powerful stuff you weren't able to in the past. But basically, I suggest you download the app. I have a beta version, so I'm doing all the little testing and getting through the errors that they have there. But I suggest people put it on their home screen. I have mine in my dock down here. And let me just jump into the Shortcuts app. So here I am starting out with the basics of just how the gallery or how the app works overall. So you've got, here, let me zoom out a little bit so you can all see. Here we are currently in the gallery, and then you can also see the library full of your shortcuts here. And I have I have way too many shortcuts, but that's because I actually worked at Workflow, the app that Apple originally acquired and turned into the Shortcuts app. And so basically, I've been building these for years and years, and so I have a ridiculous amount, and they're all nicely organized by color, which is just glorious. Getting some text here. But basically, if you open up the app and look through the gallery, you can see a whole collection of shortcuts that are super useful. Also, I do want to acknowledge that I'm at 7% battery, so I'm going to stop streaming when this thing dies. But basically, the gallery has a bunch of collections of different categories of shortcuts that you can run. And I actually built almost all of these when I worked at Workflow and put these into the gallery. So I'm definitely hoping that they add some more soon, because a lot of this is actually stuff that I put in here. So I haven't worked at Apple for a while now, and I do want to see some more example shortcuts or like curations. Woo, losing focus. Sorry about that. Somebody in the chat asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you regarding WWDC and shortcuts? I am extremely excited because I feel like shortcuts, like, for example, this is a perfect one. I did this, and so some of the stuff is barely even updated, which is fine, but I want to see this go even further. Okay, I have a mind map over here that I'm checking out. Oh yeah, one thing I do want to mention is just check out the settings for shortcuts. Let's go in here. I have a lot of apps. But just what's important, I would say, is the Icloud Sync. For a while, this wasn't totally working, and so for a lot of people, it was kind of scary that their shortcuts weren't backing up or anything like that, or syncing properly across devices. But when you have this set up, you can definitely rely on your shortcuts. Like if you delete the app, or I've seen some database corruption things that happen. So for those people, it should be synced, and if you ever see a corrupt database, just restart your device. It should fix it. Thanks everyone who's saying stuff in the chat. This is awesome. All right. So the Shortcuts app, the basics. Here, let me refocus over here. I have my node as a mind map off to the side, and I'm going through this because I love this app. But I will demo that another time. Okay. So let's just jump right in. So here's like the basics of shortcuts and how it works. The main screen, I call this the shortcut editor. And right here, it says the very basics. Add actions from the left to build your shortcut. So you can drag things in and then chain these together. But you do have to figure out the right order for stuff to make sense. But let's just jump back real quick because this little button right here is fantastic because it opens the documentation. And probably want to open this in full Safari. Oh, I got some other crap open here. Excuse my language on a live stream. But this is based off of the workflow documentation that I also wrote when I worked at Workflow. And so it's curated into a bunch of sections that you can go through and check out how all of this works, because I mean, I obviously recommend it since I had written some of the original copy, but this is really helpful just to have as a reference. So I definitely recommend everyone check this out. And let's just see. I've already even gone through some of this, but let's just see what it says, because some of it has changed. Let me zoom in a little bit. But yes, when you run a shortcut, each action in the list runs in order from top to bottom, and each action plays a role in the task you want to accomplish. And basically, there's a lot of different variety, but here we can start out just looking at the sidebar, and you can do something like get an upcoming event, and then it'll change depending on what you show there. And just when you run the shortcut, it'll start pulling in data. Okay, this is random, but does anyone have this bug where it shows, like Facebook downloaded a bunch of birthdays when I was younger and said that they're like 15-year-olds old when this is like my 35-year-old cousin. So I don't know what that is, but once you get in a piece of content, you can then do more with it. Like calendar events actually have all of these different details available in here. And so basically when this shortcut, this passes out a piece of content, and then you, if you want to do something with that, get more just specific details, you can grab that. Like, let's see, just the title. But then Shortcuts also has a, hey, Alex. I do a podcast with Alex Cox, who works at Cards Against Humanity, and also does the podcast Due by Friday, which is amazing. So thanks for watching, Alex. I mean, I think the way people correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think the way people tend to think of shortcuts is using Siri shortcuts, because this whole thing is what I call a custom shortcut and isn't actually always going to work inside of Siri. I think that's one of the most confusing parts, because basically Workflow was built before Siri shortcuts existed. And so the way most of this app is designed is actually using stuff that is available to third parties, and not a whole lot of like Apple magic dust. A lot of there's newer like weather actions and notes and clock stuff. But otherwise, a lot of this is using things that have always been kind of available in iOS. And then the team at Workflow put it all together and made this system called the content graph that works in the background and lets you switch all the pieces of content together instead of just failing like some normal, I don't know, you can do it in coding, but it's a little bit more complicated. But also I do realize that I probably need to back up a little bit in a moment, but I just want to show people why Workflow is so impressive, or why Shortcuts is now. But let me get this a little, sorry about that, all the switching. The way is the view content graph action. And so basically this lets all the different things that you work with on iOS be abstracted, let me get the full view, into individual pieces of the data surrounding it. And so this is a very fancy looking cool demo, but basically anytime you have a calendar event, you really have like the calendar item here, and then the date for the event, which can also then be, I'm not sure why this is saying it could be a URL. Some of this can get confusing. You can go, oh, it's NS URL, which is how iOS works. like linking that. When I just clicked on that, it took me into the calendar event. I didn't even mean to do that. But then the calendar event can be just the text information of all of this stuff. There's a whole variety of content that can be converted back and forth. Ooh, only at 5%. So what this means is that in the Shortcuts app, you can actually combine steps and they work together, whereas Siri Shortcuts are standalone things that function from other apps. You can see some examples in the Siri suggestion category. Like Fantastical can show me my entire schedule for today, but this doesn't actually interact with anything. It's not going to pass out my schedule so I can work with it. And so, at least for now, this is where I've struggled personally with sharing shortcuts, because everybody wants just the Siri shortcuts that all work perfectly, and a lot of what you can do in the Shortcuts app doesn't actually work in Siri all the time, and then it also has more functionality that isn't available to third parties. So, but then, and even further, some third parties do have special actions because of we built them when we worked at Workflow. So things like Bear have these more advanced actions that can do, they like pass data and send it all, but really this just works with the URL scheme for Bear and passes the data in this really kind of janky way. And so hopefully something like this gets more advanced in the future, but at least for now, the basics of how Shortcuts works probably isn't going to change. I see some comments in the chat that the content graph probably just went like totally over your head, but that's okay, because it is confusing, and I think you'll learn more from how it works in the flow of a shortcut rather than on just like seeing those little web things, because that gets just really complicated. So I think the way that I like the most basic demo of how content works in here, I find being easiest is music, because everybody understands like the metadata of music. There's like titles and the album artist and things like that. So I'm just going to get a random song, just one. And then even here is some of the metadata that I can work with. And I'm going to get something that I've played recently. So let's hope it wasn't something embarrassing. I'm going to run the shortcut and see. So right away, I'm getting Shortcuts is so complicated because there's so many use cases and edges. But right here, it looks like something failed, because it's like, oh, you can't actually export it. But really, this just means this little preview window, you can't like steal this music file from Apple Music. But really, if you want to do something with it, you can play that song right away. So it could just go. And then that's playing on my iPad now. Oh God, it's Drake? That's not right. I was not listening to Drake recently. Okay, I'm embarrassed now. But basically, let's say, okay, I want to get from that song, I want to have my own little thing that has Siri tell me what to say. So here I'm searching for the word results. Okay, I'll show the category. It's in scripting. And then this thing right here, show results, is how you get Siri to speak. Let me zoom in again. Shows the specified text in Siri or in an alert. So when you type something in here, you can basically have her say whatever you want when you run the shortcut from Siri. And so this is actually the main way that I interact with Siri in my custom shortcuts, is just saying the current, here, let me zoom out. The current song is, and then now I'll show you how the content graph works, because we can take this music and then grab the details out of that track automatically. And so one way you can do it, which was originally built in Workflow and is how a lot of traditional programming works, is you can declare the individual pieces of details that you want to grab out of it. So like I want to get the title, and then usually what you do for programming, and you do this in shortcuts too, is you can set it as a variable, because you want to be able to retrieve that piece of information later. And you can do something like title it as the word title. Oh man, people are making fun of me for the Drake in the chat. That's how embarrassing. That's I should have filtered this more, But then what's cool about shortcuts is if you want to like go get all of this data, normally you'd have to come back and then get the variable from before. And the word variable it's like a total programming term, but it makes it the most confusing. Okay, sorry, I'm doing stuff while I'm explaining, so that's probably a terrible idea. But variables are just like giving something a name and then setting it aside for later. And then also if you like set a whole pile of information like a song, not just the title of a song, then you can grab out of that pile again later. And so here, let me jump back in. Trying to keep it visible. But basically what I did was Shortcuts automatically stores everything that you use in here as what's called magic variables, and then you can get the information back out. So here in the picker, here's the variable that I declared, but if I want to get something automatically, I can go back up here and click on the word music and then just get more details out of that. So instead of using this get details of music over and over again, I can actually go even further and do all of this only using variables, which show up here in above the keyboard too. This button is supposed to show everything. It doesn't actually, because it's a bug. Let me take this off my keyboard. Normally, tapping this, oh, no, it still just hates me. Okay. Shortcuts team, please fix this. Because it's a pretty bad demo when I do that, but it works. Here, let me get my phone. Don't want to show what I'm up to, but let's say you're getting a calendar event. Oh, out of focus. This is very hard to do both at once, but it should show this whole tray of the things that you can work with. And so that's actually really nice, because then you can get, like, if there's a bunch of different details, you don't have to go physically select it. But right now on the iPad, I do, apparently. So let's do it. Got the music one, and then I can just get, like, the current song is title by artist or album. On the album. And then let's just say, okay, I guess it's not technically the current song. You can, I was thinking I was going from here, get current song. That technically does work, but I'll explain that later. But basically, you can like chain all of these different types of apps together. So here I got super deep into an example, but I just want to show you guys all of the different categories of apps, because usually people don't actually even go through here and you can't figure out what's possible with shortcuts. So let's just do it super fast. Favorites, you can favorite any of your actions and save it for later. So if I want to like always do this, I can favorite it, go back, it'll show up in this list. And then these don't like automatically change when you drag something out. You can always just grab from your favorites. But there's apps. You can open apps. You can open any app on your device. Like this alone is awesome. You can chain together just opening 3 different apps in a row, something like that. There's a whole lot of possibility. Searching for the App Store. This has its own little get details thing, but this also has rich content. But you can do stuff like search for the app Bear, and then okay, I will jump ahead here, but choose from the list, and then based off of those search results, go in and grab details. Chances are this is probably best for like Apple bloggers or something like that, because you're writing about the App Store. But for me, I can automate a lot of that stuff, and I'm actually going to make a list of like every single app that I have that works with shortcuts and interlink it all using this data, because I don't want to go in and pull from the App Store like the price or the most recent description and things like that. But that's not super. I'd say the main one people should use from here is Open App, because you can just instantly open almost any app on your device. Okay, calendar events are always great. And in here, there's also clocks, date, math, reminders, and the app Fantastical, which was part of the workflow era kind of things. But the most frequent one is probably either getting your upcoming events or finding calendar events. And you can kind of look into the future and grab a bunch of data. And so like I have to go to a vet appointment in a few hours. So gonna take care of my kitty cat. And then I can do something like show it in the calendar and jump right in there. Oh, I guess that's multiple, but yeah. Pick which one jumps into the calendar. These clock ones are actually super useful. You can start timers, although you can only do one timer, classic. But you can also set your alarms. And so I've seen a bunch where Mike Hurley from Relay FM has basically, depending on the certain day, if it's like Monday or Tuesday, it'll toggle on certain alarms and toggle off others. Also, I just want to note I'm at 2%, so I might stop early. There's a lot of date and time math that you can do, which is kind of, I'm going to say, out of scope of this video, but also I suggest messing around with reminders. You can pull in all of your data from reminders. Like a really good example is just a groceries list. Let me add in show results and just put the whole thing. That might just work. Let's see what's on my grocery list. Oh, no. See, it's pulling in every single reminder that's ever existed, but you have to add a filter for something like is not completed. It is kind of cool. You can actually go in and delete all of your completed reminders at once. I see a request in the chat for dictionaries, and I'm going to hold off for now. Oh, that's terrible reminders in there, but I'm going to hold off for dictionaries for now because it's super complicated, but I will definitely get into that in a future one. All right. So let me just jump in over here. Where did I just lost myself. One thing you can't do is complete reminders, so that's kind of frustrating. But I generally use it as like a data input source and just go into the app when I need to check them off. Okay, contacts. Let me just cruise through a little bit since I'm creeping down on the battery life here, but you can get a bunch of contact information. You can send emails and extract emails, but you can't actually pull in emails. So that's something that people want a lot. You can use Apple Pay actually and Venmo, which is cool. I don't have it on here because I don't have Venmo installed because it's not for iPad, but that's pretty cool. You can kind of automate your bill pay or something like that. Or I do something to add in a title and split things. Alex, you cannot check reminders off. I mentioned that. You can make phone calls. You can do FaceTime and automate just jumping into FaceTime audio, because I actually prefer FaceTime audio than most phone calls because the quality is a lot better. But you can totally there's a list action, and then you could choose from list and make your calls automatically to favorite people. And even call on Skype, although I don't use Skype for that from iPad. In the future, though, if iOS ever got better audio capabilities, I could totally see using this to automate podcasting on iPad, which is totally dope. Oh, please call me out if I am using swear words. Also, I am not very aware of that. This isn't on the iPad, but the health data is actually absolutely amazing. I will show this in another demo, but for now, rest assured, this is really cool because this stuff is super powerful. And if you don't have an Apple Watch, it's especially great for like workouts and stuff like that. The home scenes I guess I haven't used it on this iPad recently, but you can set up all of your home scenes to run automatically. And so I have a bunch in here that I can use and basically chain them with Siri together, which is nice. But this is only scenes and not devices. So I'd love to be able to trigger our devices individually. Oh God, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna run out of battery in like 2 seconds here. I skipped documents. You can make zips, you can extract archives and everything. So this is absolutely fantastic. I often run into like downloading an ebook online and I can't do anything with it. And so even just like right here, those two actions can do it right away. And if this is set up to share content you can just like run this from a web page where it says like, oh, here's a zip of a page. You can share things like that. I will show how to run shortcuts in another video too, because this is getting too long. Oh, I see. Alex wasn't saying I was swearing. She wants to create a virtual swear jar with Venmo. That's a great idea. Okay, so keep going then. You can pass in PDFs and open that iPad markup view and draw all over them, which is nice. You can grab all your files from iCloud Drive, but this is slightly limited too, and it's evil because you have to either use the document picker like this, or you can pull from the shortcuts folder only, but then you can't like go into any file in files right now, which I think they should add. I kind of just assume some of this stuff is going to happen because it seems so obvious, but you can grab from anywhere in Dropbox, which is really nice. But Dropbox doesn't respect iOS tags, so I am like stuck in between these two spots right now. But you can actually get links to your Dropbox file, which is impressive too. So you can like automate a whole sharing system right away. This is actually one that's super useful, and I think people don't know about how open-in works, but this lets you open things automatically in certain apps. And so I've actually done CSVs and open into numbers, and you can basically take text, use shortcuts, and then there's two actions called combine text and split text, and you can basically create a whole comma separated value spreadsheet programmatically, pass it into numbers or Excel, and then just have a spreadsheet ready to go. So there's some crazy stuff. Quick look is nice for like previewing information and as you're working on a shortcut. You can make PDFs programmatically. That's always great. Printing also, so you could have a whole like print system going on. I see some questions in the chat about why you can't do some of these features, and I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, but a lot of this is still based off of how workflow worked in third-party apps, and I think I can't probably even legally speak to Apple priorities, but it is just like all of this stuff is built using engineering time and work, and so I have a feeling that some of this stuff will get changed in the future, and some of it might just be sort of like they haven't gotten to it yet, so I'm not sure. But there's also then a bunch of actions for Bear, Drafts, Evernote, and Ulysses, and these ones are all awesome. Evernote actually uses their web API, so this all works in the background too and works with Siri. So you could do something that like call out to your HomePod and then it reads out an Evernote note for you, which is awesome. I need to do some of that because it's just very cool. Then there's a bunch of stuff like you can even get your current location and GPS coordinates and stuff like that. So this is fun for just like data nerds, but also there's huge range of possibilities of like professional applications that use exact coordinates and things like that. You can do a decent amount with maps, but this is also slightly limited because the main search thing is search local businesses. And so you can really only search near certain areas and not really like full maps search. But then you can pass things into maps or use, I don't have it installed on here, but if you have Google Maps or Waze, you can show directions in those services and even get like biking directions in Google Maps, which is dope. You can get the weather. This is one I'm definitely going to demo because this is like relevant every day for people, but you can get a bunch of the weather conditions. Like, let's see, what is it outside right now? It's 60 degrees. Okay. Music stuff, I showed a little bit. You can actually search iTunes, which is basically like the App Store search or like searching for the actual data. And so you could easily get also, besides just music, podcasts, music videos, audiobooks. Like, look at this. This is ridiculous. You can grab all of this data from the iTunes RSS feeds directly, which is awesome. All of that music stuff, you can create whole playlists or like curate your up next stuff. And so you could have it like randomize songs from the 1960s that I've listened to in the last 3 weeks and to play them on shuffle based off of the album artist order or something like that. It's nuts. And you can even like control the volume levels and stuff like that. This doesn't work with anything like Spotify, which is terrible, but I hope that gets changed as well. This lasts so long. I'm at 1% still. I'm going to stop soon because this is kind of a long stream, but also tons of ability to record audio, take photo and video. You can script all this type of image combination things. I do this all the time. I like take a bunch of screenshots and then put them next to each other automatically. You can take your bursts on iOS and turn them into GIFs, or like convert videos into GIFs entirely. You can grab anything from your photos library or grab just like certain types of stuff. This is all amazing also. I'd love to see more with video though. You can re-encode information, like you could convert a video just into an M4A or IAIFF, never said that out loud. Can't do MP3s, which used to be in here, and that needs to come back. But you can also like encode all your metadata in properly. And then you can also trim your videos, which is kind of nice, but I'd love that to be programmatic. Import to Lightroom. This is actually this is the single action that has been built since Shortcuts was developed for a third party, and they have functionality. So I hope this is like a hint at some sort of API for third-party apps to do this, build actual actions in Shortcuts, but I have no idea. So we will see. You can upload an image or two, which I think for a while we got in trouble because people were basically like destroying their API, uploading everything that they could. All right, quickly sharing Clipboard stuff. This is all amazing. Like you can, it died. Okay, I'm gonna switch real quick. I do have 2 iPads because I'm the worst. But I just don't want to stop because there's more to go. So let's see how these camera angles work. Okay. 50%, that's a little bit better. But yes, the clipboard means that you can do a lot of shortcuts where you just copy something and then run a shortcut. I usually do these from the widget, and then you can have information run into your shortcuts widget just from being on your clipboard. So that's actually really cool. Here's where you send email. You can send iMessages in the background. So you could be like, hey, I'm leaving and on the way home. You can even like curate your whole shared photos library albums. AirDrop sharing stuff. That's always super useful to have. Like, I always want to share my latest screenshot to the person next to me, something like that. Let's get this a little brighter. A bunch of social sharing. So you can send tweets, you can send stuff through to Tweetbot or WhatsApp, and you can also post onto your WordPress blog, which is super cool too. And this is actually like pretty powerful. I need to take more advantage of that, but I do use Ulysses, their integration. And that's, I think, okay, I might have just cruised through the end there, but that's most of it. The main stuff that you use to work with these are all in the scripting categories, and this is super useful. This is where it starts to get a little bit more complex, and you don't just have 3 actions in a row or something. It can kind of start splitting off and going crazy. But a bunch of these details were added, which people seem to go crazy for, being able to turn on and off your cellular data, or like this is the show this to your Android friend and they'll get jealous. But then there's a whole bunch of crazy functionality. You can do things like build whole JSON dictionaries, if you know what that means. Do math calculations and do a bunch of conversions and measurements things. Like in here, this is the Dr. Drain category, if anybody follows his website. And you can even like run scripts on your Mac using SSH, which I barely even knew what this meant until even recently, but that's also very cool. Federico Vitici, losing focus here. Come on, camera. Making me look like a dummy. Federico Vitici of Mac Stories has some awesome ones that like trigger his iTunes and AirPlays to his HomePod and stuff like that, which is also very cool. I do recommend just for anyone watching, basically, if you have shortcuts, go back up your shortcuts, because I can get all of my shortcuts and 1,185. But save those all to files just to like guarantee that you don't ever lose any data. And then there's a bunch more in here, but I think I'm going to save this for another day because this is too complex. But yes, then the main thing is you can start to combine stuff from third-party apps, and these all work a little bit weird, or it's not always exactly what you would expect. This is usually based off of your previous stuff. See, look, I was playing not terrible music before, but I don't like a whole lot of the, like, apples are particularly bad sometimes. Like, I don't need to know a specific story. I never want to save that as a Siri shortcut. I don't get that. But you can do a lot of standalone things. Usually, I'd say they're best for opening places. Like this one, reading list, is dope because you can just jump right into your reading list. Or like my things today list. I'm not going to show you that because that's terrible right now. Or maybe go into Matthew Castanelli on Twitch if you're watching this on YouTube, because I'm going to do some more casual ones there, I think. But yeah, I don't know if I necessarily explained a lot of what you can do with shortcuts. A lot of this is how it works, but I'd say the best examples are in the gallery of things like getting your street address, getting the travel time, saying I'll be home then, and sending it to somebody important, or something like a lot of these are a little bit consumer casual, which I think a lot of people who always hear like the iPad is what makes me able to work, or shortcuts is what is able to make me work on the iPad. And then the gallery is like, set a timer for your laundry. It's like, I mean, I literally built a lot of them. So like, I didn't even plan for them to be like, these ones I didn't do because they work with Siri. I didn't even know about shortcuts when I left. And so there's not a whole lot of like, here's how you work on your iPad stuff there. But that's something that I want to be sharing more and more. It all depends on who you are and what you use. And so sometimes that can be hard because it's like, you have to go use something new in order to really take advantage of it. So I do hope that all of these like minor concern, or not minor concerns, but concerns that I have do get resolved at WWDC, because that would be nice for like any app to work with shortcuts. Then I can really, and everything to work in Siri too. Like right now, if you have to display something on the screen, it won't work with Siri. If you have to choose from lists and things like that, that just doesn't work with Siri, because it's just not built to have her like read back to you your list options and then you like, I could see that getting really messy quickly. So I'm glad they're taking the time to get it right, at least. But yeah, I'd say that's the basics of the Shortcuts app. I will definitely rewatch this and try to note where I just kind of went to town and jumped over some of the core concepts, but at least maybe now you can come back and reference this for some of those basics. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Matt Casanelli, and I do tweet out a lot of shortcuts, and I've been writing on my own website also lately a lot more, MatthewCasanelli.com. And I have a newsletter too if you don't have an RSS feed to subscribe to it or anything like that. But yeah, that is the basics of the Shortcuts app. And thank you everyone for tuning in to my first live stream. And I'm always looking for comments and feedback too. So let me know. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you in the next one.